Father, earthly mother, divine seer that sees, create me again, take me in your hands, bring out what's inside of me.
Yeah, we always miss the good parts. So yeah, what I was saying is that our current birthing practices from the Western culture is a total disgrace. It's an utter disgrace. It's violating new human beings in their sovereignty and in their freedom of choice and will, and thus it's actually raping them at birth. Because doing anything interfering with human life without consent is what is it? It's rape. It's raping without consent, trespassing onto the sovereign self's domain. And so what's freedom? It's the domain of the free here of these selves. And this is happening by the thousands, by the millions. And this is something that I feel that corruption and the ritualistic, blood-orientated, satanic programming and violation that occurs in those medically accepted and standardized, all of these fantasy labels that are used to sort of make everybody feel disempowered and praising the medical establishment. The whole Freemasonic, Luciferic, satanic cult programming that underpins that has driven it in that direction, is this intrusiveness, this taking birth away from doulas and midwives, taking it away from the feminine, and having predominantly men being. There's been so much that has transpired, and it's neither good or bad. All it is a springboard for love to return to holy within oneself. So anybody that listens to this is going to maybe have a lot of emotional reactions. Well, it's just because this story lives in you. Because birth trauma is something that, if unaddressed, keeps people so prone to be manipulated, to be stirred into emotional reactions. And this is from the black magic that is occurring on the earth, that has been practiced for thousands of years. This is where the wetiko and the parasite has the greatest influence. Because when you violate and rape a child at birth, every form of trauma causes a gap, a hole, an energetic vacuum to occur. Because life just got severed, life just got fully interfered with, life got interjected with violence. Like you can't cut an umbilical cord without violence. I know what it feels like to cut an umbilical cord. It is the most gruesome act that I've ever undertaken. It didn't want to get cut, it didn't feel good, but hey, I was given the scissors because now it's your turn, Dad. Now you get to do something in the process of bringing, this boy to the world. And I see the direct effects of a violated child at birth through unconsciousness, through ignorance, through gullibility of my brought down, programmed, disempowered, utterly not self-sovereign orientation of standing as a man in a birth space. And standing as a man in myself as a whole. I see the sheer difference between that and the second child that Melissa gave birth to, Sarah, who was a lotus birth, and the beautiful presence of self that Sarah will retain to respect. That if in the past I've gone over her, I've gone loud into her, I've tried to go into these frequencies of controlling her, she would articulate how it feels to her, because she's connected to her feelings and her will has been remained intact. Because this is one of the key things that happens when we get traumatized and violated at birth. The first disfragmentation of the human totality of self that occurs is that the will separate itself. And it goes and sits at the back of the playground because That's such a shock to the system. Along with it, the entire energetic download as the baby comes out of the mother's womb, all the energy information and all the energy transfer, all the auric field, all of what that beautiful organ, that portal between that instrument between a cosmic realm of creation that brings souls through the womb space, through a placenta into a human organism and readies that human organism for the first breath to be taken in. On that first breath, huge amounts of information are drawn in from the placenta. On the first breath, most human younglings have already been separated, and it leaves a void space of being without breath, being without life, being without love. There's been this being grown and promulgated and seeded and informed and infused with all this life-forming frequency, a field, a watery field, which is a ureic field of plasma. All of that is part of growing the human organism, the baby, and that has a resonance to it. The Mal sort of frequencies of being inside an enclosed watery bubble and hearing all the sounds through all of these months from the external world being filtered through the skin. And so there's been so much information that has been absorbed and so much resonance of the mother's heartbeat in that space that has all been part of all the communication. And all of a sudden, not only is the baby out in the white light, bright light environment, cold steel, little jab on the heel because vitamin K needs to be injected, at the moment that it is able to tune in with I am still connected, it's separated from life, from love, from that entire journey. And that's a violation of the highest degree, which causes huge amounts of trauma that will, for most people, lie entirely unresolved until we start questioning why we fear authority. The reason that we fear authority, and the reason, therefore, that we ask for permission and we ask people, can I? And we don't ask people, do you feel willing, or how do you feel about, or we simply stop asking permission altogether because we know that we deserve. All of that gets violated. All of that goes right outside of our sovereign physiological matrix, and with that we may be looking for who we really are most of our lives. And then we get dumped into some sort of education system that tries to start to get the younglings as early into the industrial schooling system as we can. So now we got preschool, and then before preschool, well, it's business, it's enterprise, it's all entropic. It's all just to keep the status quo happening and make it all sort of keep Fruppyland going. And it may make all sense, but it is not natural. It's not respecting human sovereignty. It's not raising younglings. It's bringing them down into a system. And most people don't know this. And most people don't know the implications, but the implications are experienced in the living field. And just because you don't know that you get traumatized when you get violated at birth doesn't mean that your ignorance keeps you from actually experiencing the traumatic impacts of the actual physiological experience. Unfortunately, most people are kept in ignorance because of the cult programming, the
busyness, the time.
The time is a fantasy of
creating a home.
It is phenomenal. So lotus birth, in that sense, is the most beautiful, most holistic, most sovereign, and most respecting of the spirit and the body and the being of a new human life coming into the earth. And there are traditions that in their decision-making decision-making processes decide that like a lot of tribal women will actually bite the cord through with their teeth. Most times that is, I think, in seems in me that in more traditional settings of ancient wisdom traditions, as we call them, or indigenous cultures, that they would have waited for the placenta to stop, the cord to stop pulsating. I really see that due to the Western practices and how the disempowerment is being fed straight into the parents, just surrender everything, relinquish your sovereignty. The doctor knows you don't have to know anything. We'll just give you a little pain shot so you don't have to feel anything. You're numb from the waist down. All of this just makes younglings wired to be numb and docile and relinquishing their sovereignty, relying on the third party authority, external authority, that in human nature there is no authority outside of ourselves. So this is really at the core, to recap all of this, this is really at the core of the disempowerment and the disfragmentation of the human experience, and that needs to be spoken about because it violates human nature, it violates natural justice. It's rape without consent, and it's ritualistic rape. It's done to create a culture of humans that are wired with disempowerment, wired with unresolved emotional imprinting, with an external authority that they don't even know really is hunting them, is chasing them. This is the entropic fear culture.
When you say wired, what do you mean?
Well, when we get violated, we get neurologically programmed. We are wired in that sense. We are having an artificial override of this entropic nature of life. And when that's the start of our process, and then we're rough-handled and we're not even put on the chest of the mother to be in touch again with that heart resonance that we knew from when we were inside, when that doesn't occur, and we're just taken for examination and measurement, and it's all fucking science again to make sure the baby is alright. Like, it's so entropic, it's so fear orientated, and it's so control and dominance driven. And it all is for those people who are all traumatized in those environments that are working, doctors, nurses, and so forth. What I see in that, it's all just justifying their job. If they just let a woman birth in her own time, in her own space,
There'd be no job.
What the fuck are they really doing there? Like, excuse my sort of tenseness, but I really get a little bit activated in my cells. I have resolved my birth trauma really, really deeply, and I have really come to accept the failure of every and all external authorities and reclaim my own sovereignty, which is really the sovereignty of self reclaiming itself. And so I have hardly any fear, and when I do, it's just performing a function to reclaim yet another bit of me. And so I do speak a little bit charged in it, but I feel that it's really relevant to convey the seriousness of what's really going on here. And as I shared with you earlier, I was recently...
It sounds like the divine masculine. More so that wording around, more so just no.
That's right. Shining a real clear light and calling it what it is. And of course I could find a better word than fuck. But...
Fucks works. Fucks triggers.
Fuck is a nice word. If it's used in context.